So far in the attachment unit, we've mainly focused on healthy mother and infant attachments. But what happens to children if that mother-infant relationship is disrupted? What kind of an adult do you become if your mother just isn't really there for you when you need her? To find out, we'll review John Bowlby's theory of maternal deprivation. But we'll also talk about privation, and this is the complete absence of any maternal care at all. Sadly, this was experienced by thousands of Romanian babies in the 1980s. So, how did they turn out? Is having a primary attachment figure actually that important after all? The PsychBoost flashcard app has a new feature. Test yourself with over 1,500 multiple choice questions, including every topic on A-level or GCSE psychology. Try paper 1 for free right now. And Patreon supporters can watch PsychBoost videos ad-free, learn from over 17 hours of exclusive exam tutorial videos, and access hundreds of digital and printable resources, including mind maps, quiz sheets, worksheets, teaching slides, and more. Bowlby's theory of maternal deprivation. In this attachment class, we're back to talking about the work of John Bowlby. Hopefully you remember he used the term monotrophy to explain an infant's uniquely strong bond with its mother. The mother represents a secure base for the child. Imagine her as the child's safety net. They can explore, but they've always got a comforting place to return to if things get overwhelming. Bowlby argued there's a time clock for forming a monotrophic bond, a critical period lasting up to 30 months post-birth. If for some reason this unique bond is interrupted in this time period, Bowlby believed that the child has experienced maternal deprivation, and in later life will have severe problems in how they navigate social situations, manage their emotions, and even think and learn. While the critical period is up to 2.5 years, according to Bowlby, he thinks there is still some risk from deprivation up to 5 years. To be more precise about the consequences of deprivation, Bowlby claimed deprivation would lead to poor social development, resulting in behaviour outside of societal norms. This might include delinquency, which is committing minor criminal acts like thievery. Maternal deprivation also hinders emotional development and can result in affectionless psychopathy, a lack of affection or genuine care for others. These individuals might not experience empathy for other people's feelings or show remorse for their harmful actions. Impairment in intellectual development may cause these children to lag behind their peers in cognitive skills, as shown by a lower IQ. Bowlby says this initial bond with the mother forms the foundation for how the individual perceives and engages in future relationships. This is because it creates a schema about how relationships work. This is the internal working model. Building on this, the continuity hypothesis argues an ineffective internal working model results in challenges in forming healthy relationships later in life, and even difficulties in parenting offspring. Evaluations. Bowlby's 44 Thieves study was his attempt to support his theory of maternal deprivation empirically. He compared emotionally disturbed boys who were thieves to similar boys who were not. As predicted by deprivation theory, he found the thieves were more likely to have experienced prolonged separation from their primary caregiver during the critical period, and were more likely to be affectionless psychopaths. These results suggested a link between deprivation, delinquency, and affectionless psychopathy. The 44 Thieves study and similar research on deprivation are correlational, as controlled experiments are impossible in this area. This means Bowlby's research can't establish causation. Factors such as socioeconomic status, family criminal history, or inherited mental health conditions could have influenced the likelihood of maternal deprivation in infancy and later offending by the children. Bowlby's attachment theory has had real-world impacts, influencing public policy and social welfare systems. Hospitals, for example, altered visitor policies for hospitalized children to allow for a consistent caregiver presence. However, these positive changes have had economic implications, such as the rising costs of nursery care. The social sensitivity of Bowlby's theory is also important to consider. The emphasis on maternal deprivation has led to increased maternity leave, as opposed to paternity or shared parental leave, potentially reinforcing traditional gender roles in the home and ultimately increasing the gender pay gap at work. Linked to this point, Bowlby's emphasis on the mother as the primary attachment figure has been criticised as gender-biased. While infants may experience maternal deprivation, this focus on the mother potentially downplays the contribution fathers and other caregivers can make in a child's emotional development. Schaffer and others have found that infants can form multiple strong attachments, and researchers such as Field have found that fathers can provide adequate care. We're about to cover orphan studies. The children in these studies experience privation, a far worse experience than maternal deprivation, and we can use their results to counter Bowlby. As while the findings from these studies do show early attachments are vital for healthy development, they also offer the potential for recovery if a child is given appropriate care and intervention. These orphan researchers suggest it might be more accurate to view the first few years as a sensitive period, not a critical period. Romanian orphan studies, effects of institutionalisation. Institutionalisation refers to children being brought up under the state's care, typically in facilities like children's homes or hospitals. Extended periods in these settings can mould a child's behaviour. They often adapt to the structured rules and norms in these institutions. Given that these institutions can't offer the same level of emotional care as families, there are concerns about negative long-term implications on the development of children who live here. Firstly, we should make clear the distinction between the maternal deprivation we've just covered with Bowlby and what we're about to talk about, privation. Deprivation refers to insufficient emotional care due to frequent or prolonged absences of the primary attachment figure. Privation is the complete absence of emotional care, meaning the child cannot form any attachment bond at all. The end of the Romanian Revolution in 1990 revealed an absolutely heartbreaking reality. It was estimated that around 170,000 children were abandoned and living in horrific conditions in orphanages. Before the revolution, women in Romania were encouraged to have as many babies as possible. These low-income families were unable to look after their children, so they gave them to the state. And they were raised in what were effectively warehouses, with too few nurses looking after too many infants. Many infants were severely malnourished and many experienced abuse, and none of them were cared for emotionally. A large number of orphans were adopted by families from around the world, including the UK. Rutter's ERA study from 1998 to 2011 was a longitudinal research study that followed the development of 165 Romanian orphans who found new homes with British families. The study's design, which observed children adopted at different ages, was a natural experiment and revealed the long-term impacts of early privation. The infants Rutter followed up were split into 3 groups: those adopted before they turned 6 months, those adopted between 6 months and 2 years, and those adopted after 2 years. Their development was compared to a control group of British adoptees who hadn't experienced privation. The children's progress was then carefully assessed at ages 4, 6, 11 and 15. We should be aware of the main findings. At age 6, it's typical for children to be cautious around strangers, but those adopted after 6 months displayed disinhibited attachment, meaning they were unusually friendly towards unfamiliar adults. This trait was most common among children adopted after the age of 2. At age 11, over half of the children who had disinhibited attachment at age 6 continued showing this behaviour. Children adopted after 6 months also showed delayed physical, emotional and intellectual growth. The difference in intellectual development was huge. Children adopted after 24 months had an average IQ of 77, whereas those adopted before 6 months had a normal IQ, averaging 102. A few children who were adopted late exhibited quasi-autistic tendencies, struggling to comprehend social contexts. The intellectual challenges in the late adoptee group were still present at the 15-year follow-up. Rutter's study shows the importance of early adoption. The age at which a child is adopted plays a critical role in their ability to recover from the detrimental effects of privation. The adverse impacts of prolonged institutional privation are severe and long-lasting. However, many children, even those adopted after the age of 2, showed significant recovery when cared for by adoptive families. As I mentioned in the evaluations of Bowlby, these findings don't support the idea of a strict, critical period, suggesting the first few years are more of a flexible, sensitive period. Evaluations. The findings from the Romanian orphan studies resulted in significant shifts in care and adoption policies. There's a greater emphasis on prioritising infant care in institutions, promoting early adoption, and carefully screening potential adoptive families. There are issues with how Rutter's ERA study was conducted. For example, one limitation of Rutter's study is the non-random nature of adoption selection. Adoptive parents visiting Romania handpicked the children they adopted, which might have led to a preference for more sociable children. So there is a potential for bias with friendlier children being adopted at earlier ages. Given that the research on these Romanian orphans is a work in progress, the final understanding of the long-term effects of privation is not fully known. Developmental advancements may continue, enabling children to bridge the gap by adulthood. There are observations by other researchers that agree with the underlying theme that the negative effects of institutionalisation and privation can be countered with timely and appropriate intervention. Hodges and Tizard's 1989 study found that kids adopted into nurturing homes fared better in behaviour and peer interactions than those returned to their original, often hostile families. Goldfarb's 1947 investigation also agreed, comparing two groups, one raised in children's homes beyond 3 years and another fostered roughly after 6 months. This revealed that early fostering enhanced mental agility tested with IQ and sociability when assessed at age 12. I want to thank everyone over on Patreon for supporting the channel. Because of you, I've been able to teach part-time, meaning I can make Psych Boost on YouTube for everyone. And a special thank you to Kat Posnick and Ahmed Romani for supporting at the developer level. I do have extra resources that are exclusive to my patrons, so if you decide to sign up, you can grab those over my website. And these include over 100 exam question tutorial videos, of course including questions on the attachment unit. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next Psych Boost video.